Hi, my name's Lily and welcome to Small Talk. So I'm back. I'm sorry I did take a little break. It's just, it's kind of hard to get up in the morning. Yeah. Well, today I'm going to talk about what it says in the title, which is essentially what's annoying me about the conversation, mainly to do with COVID-19 #UK. First of all, I'll give you, I've got a bunny pen. Because it's Easter weekend, and also I love rabbits, because I look like one. Anyway, what's been happening here? Not much. In my own life, I have been furloughed, like my contract has been suspended, so that's caused me a little bit of worry because I'm not getting a paycheck at the end of the month. But I know that I'm in a universal situation with a lot of other people, and I'm very thankful that I'm healthy and that I can get help if I need it. Other than that, it is taking its toll. I myself am on day 28 now. I'm based in Barcelona if you're new here. So I've been in lockdown since the 15th of March. We did have our lockdown extended last weekend. So last weekend I had the triple whammy. Actually, I can't remember what one of my whammies was. So maybe let's just say double, where I got the contract suspended, and then we found out that we were going to be inside at least until the 26th of April. Anyway, it just looks like this is something that's going to continue for a while. So I thought I'd give you my insight, because I know that in the UK you're going through at the moment. My heart goes out to you because it's a really difficult situation. You're reaching your peak numbers and it's a horrible thing to live through. So I went through that I think it's about 10 days ago now. It was every day waking up to horror stories. 800 deaths, we got into the 900 mark, didn't reach the peak of the UK, that I will comment on later, and it is hard. It takes its toll, and my heart goes out to everyone back home who's living through that at the moment, and if your families are affected, I'm really, really sorry, and it's a horrible moment, but because I'm sort of in the future, let's say, I just wanted to give some reassurance and say that this peak period is horrendous, but it comes down, and you have to just know that the lockdown is working, and that, yeah, we have to stay inside, we have our freedoms restricted, but essentially this is what is making sure that our health systems are not even more overwhelmed and that further lives aren't lost. I think that what we're going to have to expect is that in the future, because the WHO is now warning about easing lockdown restrictions too quickly, because obviously Italy and Spain here, we have started to we're over the peak and the curve is going down. So we're starting to have a decrease in the amount of deaths each day and also the amount of cases reported. But they say about lifting restrictions that you could just have another spike again. So I think that we should expect that probably for the next few months, even if we're released a little bit or allowed to do more things, or the economy is started back up again, we should expect that then there will be sort of sporadic lockdowns again. If there's a peak, boom, lockdown, that sort of thing. I want to also talk about, maybe I want to do 3 videos this week. Ooh. Will I do them? I don't know. But I want to talk about cruises, because there's still 6,000 people on cruises stuck at sea and nobody's claiming them. So I want to have a little look into that. If you think it'd be interesting, give me some encouragement in the comments. I also want to talk about what's happening with the EU. Where is the EU in all of this? There has been a package of measures agreed. I haven't looked into it yet. I will have a little look at that, but I want to see what's going on, because, COVID-19 could also be the final nail in the EU's coffin. And I also want to talk about this kind of really grotesque conversation that's coming up between economic health and public health. I will do a video on that. I may mention it later as well. So what's annoying me about COVID-19 conversation in the UK? I'm talking about media conversation, press reports, what's going on Twitter, and things that I'm picking up. You can tell me what your opinion is. You can tell me what's happening in your conversations with your loved ones, with your friends, with people that you know. Anyway, first of all, the big one. Boris Johnson got ill, okay? He got really ill. And obviously that's a shock. That is a shock, and, empathy, human empathy and everything else. But there has to be a limit. The thing that I find frustrating about this is that the language has been I don't know. I've never seen language like this from press. It's gushing. It's deifying. You know, where you make a person like a god. It sort of doesn't fit what's going on. You know, when you have almost 1,000 deaths reported in a 24-hour period of British lives, and NHS workers dying on the front line, and bus drivers who have continued to serve their community, and our front pages or our BBC headlines are Boris sat up in bed. I mean, I'm sorry, I know it's the Prime Minister, and so we have to like hope that he can get better because he's the leader of our country, but this is just, I kind of find it sickening, if I'm honest. Also, I don't want to, you know, let's just think about this. Last weekend, apparently Boris Johnson was in hospital, but he was still running the country. But then Dominic Raab was going to be the one who's representing him at meetings. So, okay, Boris is running the country from the hospital bed, but Dominic Raab is representing him. Well, when did you last speak to him? Oh, over the weekend. This was on Monday. When was it? It was Saturday. So, what, we've had 48 hours and you don't know? And it actually happened because the government was lying about the situation that Boris Johnson was in. And actually he was not fit to be running the country from his hospital bed, which we've later worked out when he was admitted to ICU. Now, this is not beating up or having a go at somebody who's sick and being of bad intention. This is like, why is the government lying to us in a national crisis and trying to preserve a leader? We don't need, this isn't the 1950s. We don't need to think our leaders are beasts and strong and made from, I don't know, like iron. You know, they're humans, they're fallible. And what we need is a functioning democracy and a chain of command and transparency in an emergency, which I've talked about time and time again, that the South Korean model has been built on transparency and it has been very, very successful. I also don't like the way it's been talked about. You know, he took one for the team. He's getting back. He's a fighter. He's patriotic. Wait, he's getting better because he's patriotic. So the nurses and doctors who have died on the front line and the bus drivers, it was because they. I mean, they're not saying that, but this is the other side of that conversation. You know, and I just think the language is ridiculous. That's it. And also, why do we keep on hearing from Boris Johnson's dad? You know, I keep on seeing clips of him on, you know, a TV sofa there or being played on the bulletins of the radio. I mean, why is Boris Johnson's dad Stanley the guy that we're hearing about all the time? You know, he's not part of government. We used to laugh about Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner and the sort of Trump clan ruling America. And anyway. So that is the first point, Boris Johnson out the way. I'm very glad that he's getting better, but I really have a problem with this language, and I think everybody should, because it actually cheapens what's going on in the UK. And in a time when we are reaching our peak, a time when we are going through really a traumatizing collective experience, to focus it around one person and just, I don't know, I just think it's very dismissive and very, very, very rude and wrong. The other thing, and related to that, is that 2 days ago, in a 24-hour period, we reached that peak number of 980 deaths. This is shocking, okay? It is higher than Spain and Italy when we had more time. There should be huge questions asked, okay? And it has not had the same sort of outrage or shock or disbelief in the press. I remember seeing when we were going into lockdown, when it was horror here and when it was horror in Italy, it was headlines like horror in northern Italy, or you know, all of these terrible things. Where is the same about our own country? What is it that we are so worried about treating this in the way that it is? And also, can people say like, oh, it's not patriotic to criticize the government in a time like this? Do you know what? In Spain, they're holding their government to account. They're criticizing. They're asking the questions. That's what a normal democracy does. We don't say, oh, well, they've got it worse, or well, they've got it worse. We look at ours. We look at our leaders and the way they've managed the crisis here. And I'm finding it strange, you know? Also, I've noticed that some commentators were saying, you know, well, deaths have increased, but now it looks like it's stabilizing. The lockdown is doing what it's supposed to do. So everything's stabilizing. So at the period when we have the worst deaths figure, they're being like, oh, but guys, it's stabilizing. Like, can we have some humility and empathy to the people who are out there struggling, people who have lost their loved ones and can't say goodbye to them? Can we treat this in the manner that it's supposed to be treated? The way we were about other countries in Europe when it was going on here? So I found this sort of really contrived response by certain members of the press and some of the Twitterati. And it's this idea that, it's stabilizing, so the government measures are working at the moment. So can you honestly tell me, what more would you want the government to do? What is it exactly the government isn't doing? Isn't doing as in the present continuous, as in right now, in this moment. Okay, do you know what? At the moment, the government is doing what it's supposed to do, more or less. But we are asking, does the past actions, we're living through the present consequences of past actions. If we're asking questions about what happened in that period of 10 days between when I locked down, I think it was 9 days actually, and the UK locked down. What happened? Why did we drag our feet? What information was the science community basing it on? What happened between January 30th and March 12th, when it was still only seen as a moderate rather than severe risk to the UK? What was going on? Those past actions are the things that we are seeing today. And it is contrived to act like, because the government is finally catching up with how bad this is, that now suddenly this nullifies any sort of criticism. It's unacceptable. The other thing is that the deaths that we're seeing at the moment, it's something like a 23-day period from infection to death. So this is when the UK was still not locked down. So this period was, you can trace it back to, Friday 3 weeks ago, which is still the Cheltenham and Racecourse period. We've seen that this is a huge scandal. I was in lockdown and the UK wasn't. And the deaths that are happening today and yesterday and the next day, these are from that period. This is why this is critical. It is from the period, that gap of lockdown between when Italy locked down, we delayed here in Spain, and they are getting shit for it, sorry for my language, and then the UK dragged its feet and locked down after France with almost double the amount of deaths by that time. The other thing is that people are asking about the testing. I've said about this between Germany and the UK. I have a whole series on coronavirus, and this is what I mean. We're talking about, we need to be able to trace the history because we need to be able to hold them account. I have continuously updated when I've heard something problematic, what's been going on. So if you find it hard to think about what's happened in the last few weeks, check out my other videos. I will put them all in the description box. It's helpful. So I saw a tweet. And finally, the Chief Medical Officer of England, Chris Whitty, has admitted what no government minister has dared to. He said that Germany did what the UK should have done on mass testing. Germany got ahead on testing, and there's a lot to learn from that. Direct quote. And that is why it has a lower death rate than the UK. Okay? The people aren't making this up. Now the government has admitted it. Well, somebody who advises the government. We need to be asking about this. Okay, so the other big conversation that I don't like at the moment, the language around it, is around PPE. Okay, so that's personal protective equipment. Okay, we know that there is a huge shortage. So what does Matt Hancock, the health secretary, do? He says, this stuff is gold dust. He's addressing directly to NHS workers. This stuff is gold dust, so please don't use it too much. He's talking about using it multiple times. Now, I have seen people say, okay, so what? You're saying that when I go and do something that's a toilet duty, I then keep on the same PPE to go and prepare food? Or, I go and treat a patient who's tested positive for coronavirus, and then I go to one who's not yet tested positive. Oh, but now they do. What is going on? How dare you lecture the people who are the experts and who are on the front line? So he's saying don't overuse. I just thought that was horrible. I mean, you're the representative. You're supposed to be out there trying to procure more, doing whatever, turning around and scolding them as if they're not using more. This manipulation, this sort of, what I hate, this is something I hate about politics, and we're seeing it now in a national crisis, where a government tries to save its bacon and starts to dodge questions and change the language and the discourse rather than hold their heads up, say what they got wrong and do better to save lives. Do you know what? Owning the public opinion rather than saving public lives, sometimes that matters more in these sorts of political situations, and I hate it. So then a question was asked yesterday of him, how many NHS workers, how many nurses have passed away now? And he said, I'll pass that over to you, Anne. Anne was the chief nursing officer or something. And she started by saying, I'd like to wish the Prime Minister well on his recovery. I mean, we didn't have any mention to the lives lost and sorry to the families. We didn't have any mention to the fact that healthcare workers are dying for us and looking after us still, and they're not protected, and then they're getting scolded on top. And she said she can't give the figures because they need to, it's inappropriate when you haven't notified the families. They're figures, they're anonymous figures. This is BS. Okay, it is just to save the government's bacon and then release it later in a tweet that never gets properly reported because it's not in the publicly broadcasted press briefing. That's what it is. That's what it is. Anyway, so that's that on that. Then the final thing that I want to say about the conversation is it's something about like we've been seeing this because Boris Johnson got ill. People are saying, you know, this is now we need to take it seriously. Why? Because somebody's life is more important than others. And also that coronavirus is the great leveler of our times. It's the great leveler. It's not. It's not, okay? It has the first 10, I think, public healthcare workers who died were all from the BAME communities. So it's not the great leveler. The people who are on the front line, the bus workers, the shelf stackers, the distribution and supply chain workers, the healthcare workers, cleaners, people that we need to keep society ticking over, they come from lower income groups and often BAME communities. The most vulnerable in our society are also from these groups. So it is disproportionately affecting and infecting people who are having to keep on going out there on the front line and who are not being rewarded. Yes, okay, a virus doesn't discriminate. But do you know what? Boris Johnson, we know that he was going around shaking everyone's hand, boasting about it, and then what? 10 days later, he got coronavirus. And he made a choice. I mean, yeah, he was still on the front line. He's still gone and doing things. He's seeing people, blah, blah, blah. But it was also negligence. Whereas these people are actually having to be out there, keeping our society ticking over to a minimal. This is not a great leveler. And then more than that, what about the consequences of coronavirus? We've already seen that they're going to have a huge contraction in the economy. You know, who will pay the price? You know, the other thing is that with lockdown, people are experiencing it differently. You know, people who have houses and a garden and they're able to work from home, fine. What about people who have been furloughed? What about self-employed workers? What about manual workers who still have to go to work and can't work from home? What about families or not families who live in blocks of flats and don't have an outdoor space and are made to feel like criminals when they go to the park? This is not a great leveler, and this is getting on my nerves. I mean, I know that I'm wearing yellow eyeshadow and I have a bunny thing here and I've got a Fanta and I'm in a good mood and I sound like a bloody moody bitch. But this stuff is getting to me and I just wanted to put it out there. Emily Matlis of BBC Newsnight, she does an amazing opening ditty that I will put in the description box as well about, you know, the consequences will not be suffered the same. And anybody saying that is out of their mind. How is society going to look after people in the future? You know, what was it? The Mirror and Keir Starmer. Yeah, we have a new Labour leader. You know, I can do a video on that if you'd like. We can talk about the new front bench. They've done some sort of, all the NHS workers should get a medal after this campaign. Yeah, of course they should get a medal. Give them a medal. You should also give them a pay rise. You should also make sure that, you know, structurally these people are rewarded because these are the people that we actually need in our society. And maybe we need to rethink some of our immigration quotas, you know, because we know that the NHS relies on immigration and immigrants and that it's the backbone. We can even see it in the people who have died protecting us and our families and our loved ones. Anyway. If you like this today, please give me a like. It really, really helps. I hope you're having a lovely Easter weekend. I'm going to have an Easter brunch tomorrow. It is my 30th birthday next week and I am spending it in this wonderful bedroom on my own with my thoughts in my head. So maybe I'll make a video as well. I mean, look at this. I'm going to make so many videos. I haven't been here for a week, but I'm going to. Please subscribe and join the fam if you want to see more. I have lots of videos on lots of different political topics. If somebody wants to hear something that's not coronavirus related, put it in the comments. And thanks as always for watching and listening. And I will see you next time.